Hi, it's Wendy again, and this time we've got shift number 20, which is called Let the State Do the Work. This builds on our last shift, which was called Let a Little Be Enough. And just to reiterate what I said about that, I think that the ability to let a little experience, let a little improvement, a little movement towards what you want be magnified into more by the way that you focus on and appreciate it. This is one of the most important skills that we can use if we want to navigate through life by taking advantage of right brain awareness. So do I want to say more about that? I think I kind of do. So just to reiterate it, because like I said, this next shift builds on it. If we've started off or we're standing in a position where we don't have something that we want and we're aware of the fact that we don't, and we somehow receive a little portion, a little improvement of that bigger thing that we want, our left brains by design typically notice and measure the difference. And usually the feeling is to feel a little bit disappointed, like, oh, that's good, but it's not enough. This automatic measurement that goes on in our left brain. Whereas our right brain, through practice and through awareness, can recognize that this state of having just a little bit of that thing we want is actually all that we need. The vibration that underlies that little bit there is the same vibration that underlies more. And we can, through focus, choose to magnify in our experience this little bit into more. And we do that by really stopping and noticing and acknowledging that we received that thing. And as fully as we can, feeling and appreciating that experience as fully as we can. And when we are appreciating a little as fully as we can, it fills us up so much that it actually puts us in this same state, or can put us in this same state, which is exactly how we would be feeling if we had all of it. So I hope that's clear. So that's the emotional work. And let me just share a little example. I promised to do that, of how I used this recently in a client session. So, oops, I'm just going to scratch somebody's name out here. So, in a practical sense, oops, I wish I could just show you this. Let's say that this was my client. This is what we started off with. Was my client came on the call in this state of panic almost. All kinds of things were going on in his life that spelled disaster. And he was completely lost in that vortex of emotion, thought, and evidence. And so this is him with his mind swirling with all the facts and details and worries about the future and no clarity about what to do about it. And this is what it's like. So if this is an energy field, which is composed of the sensation in the body and the thoughts associated with it, he was completely lost to that experience. Now he's, through practice and experience, learned how to pull himself out of those states. But in that particular day, he was completely consumed by it. And so remember here I talked about consciousness, the downward causation model, with consciousness being the ground of all being, the source of everything, and then physical world and situations come into expression from consciousness by it densifying, So consciousness expresses itself as a particular or bunch of vibrations. That's the form that they are, wave patterns within the background field. And then particular vibrations are read by the mind as thoughts and by the body as emotions. This is what we're equipped with as human beings, to be able to interpret vibration. And then that same vibration, as it gets magnified by thoughts, emotions, and matches a certain physical expressions in the world. And normally with our left brains, we focus predominantly on the physical expressions in the world to decide how we feel and what we think and the states that we exist within. But it's possible by understanding this model to start from pure consciousness and actually create the experiences that we want to have. So we use that with my clients. So for example, he was having thoughts like that kept swirling around about this particular state and the emotion he was feeling. And then I asked him if he would be able to think a thought that would put him just in a slightly better feeling state about what was going on. And what he was able to think was, well, I've been here before and it worked out okay. And so as he had that thought, he stopped for a moment and just was able to feel the little bit of relief that comes from having that thought. And then we drew this picture of him not so fully immersed in this whole energy field anymore. A good portion of him was, but just a little bit of him was outside it. And so this was actually, from quantum physics point of view, a shift in superposition. And he could sense that shift in superposition because just that thought allowed him to feel differently than he had before. And so we took a moment to appreciate that little shift in his awareness and the little bit of relief that it brought. So this was an application of the last shift that you and I talked about, which was let a little be enough. So just for that moment, he let that little thought, oh, I've been here before and it turned out okay, shift him to a superposition that felt better. But the amazing thing about making a shift to a different feeling state, which is what he did, is that then what follows along with that is more thoughts and emotions that will match it. And so I asked him if he could think another thought that would also feel a little bit better than the thoughts that were within this realm here. And I can't remember what his exact thought was. It might have been something like, yeah, I always sort of magnify things, and maybe I'm doing that now. And you can notice how just these thoughts actually gave him a little bit of distance from all the gripping thoughts and emotions that he had been caught in before. And so again, he took a moment to feel the relief of that thought. And then because you have that thought, evidence comes that proves, that supports that thought. Right. I do tend to, sort of catastrophize things. Okay, so here I am, there's all of that. I have a new perspective from which to see it. And gradually over the course of, really, it was only 5 or 10 minutes, he completely talked himself into this state over here where he could still feel or sense the emotion that was there, because it had some degree of substance to it. It had been stewing there all night, and his emotions was quite caught up in it. He could still, go back into those thoughts, but because his focus was to feel free of it, gradually, by really deliberately thinking thoughts that would move him in this direction, he found himself suddenly feeling really completely calm, neutral, and distant from this. And his thing, when he finally gets outside of being lost in here. In other words, the emotion was still there, but he was over here witnessing it. Then he's home free. And this actually is exactly what we're doing when we use the in deeper process. But rather than sort of moving thought by thought, what you learn to do is just recognize the emotion, feel your way through, and emerge out this side. Or sometimes, maybe if you've done this when you've used the exercise of going into the gap, which we've used a few times lately, you're aware of yourself over here just as space with no thought. And then from a distance, if you think about a feeling or a situation that's bothersome to you, you feel it there. So it's like you're in it, but you're also outside of it, because we're actually in two places at the same time most of the time anyway. Mostly collapse into here, but we can be here. And from here, this is so much smaller. When you're lost in here, all you're thinking, you're inside it, looking out at everything. But when you're over here, this is just sensation in the body and with associated thoughts, and all of that dissipates fairly quickly when you focus all of pure consciousness, pure awareness that you are, with the intention of having that dissipate into the nothingness that's the background anyways. So I might be getting a little off topic here, but I think that's all really useful and also important to bring this stuff around and around multiple times, because like I say, it's probably not the way that you were taught to think or navigate through the world. But back to letting the state do the work. What picture do I want to use to show you? Let's use this one. Simple, cute. So back to, there's a situation you're in and you want to be somewhere else, and something small happens that's in the right direction. That gives you a tiny little piece of the relief or the improvement or the substance that you want, just a little portion of it. And then you practice appreciating that, noticing it for what it is, and really letting the reality of what already happened sort of fill you up in a way by focusing on it and amplifying it. And then allowing more thoughts to come in that remind you of other situations that are similar, that feel that same way to you, and you can, before you know it, be feeling quite full and right where you want to be emotionally. So your inner state matches where you want to be, even if the facts, when you look around, don't fully reflect that yet. Because physicality takes longer to change than the lighter vibrations of emotion and thought. But the more that you linger, the more that you build the state, the more entrenched you become in the superposition that feels the way you want to feel, the more substance gets added there. And so this is what today's shift, Let the State Do the Work, is about. Is your job from right brain perspective, from navigating the world through quantum movement rather than physical movement. The job is to achieve the state and maintain the desired state or a desired state, which really can be as general as feeling as good as you can. So when you are able to feel yourself in a state of feeling good, no matter really what you focus on, then the next step is to let the state do the work. And this is where trusting your life and trusting quantum physics comes into play, because the state itself, consciousness itself, is not separate from all those other things you want to manipulate or have happen or have change. It's the same one thing showing up in different forms. And so when you gain consistency in maintaining a particular or particularly better feeling states. The opportunity, the challenge, the experiment is to leave it with the state, to let the state do the work of bringing the next piece of it into expression in a way that you can feel, think about, and live. And this is where that shift that we had a while back called I can trust my life, or I trust my life, comes into play. So let the state do the work. And we'll talk more about it. Bye for now.